Good morning, MJ. Good morning, everyone out there. Hello, Dr. Tina. We can get you to unmute and say hello.
Thank you for that cue. I appreciate it. Good morning, Dr. Chris. Good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast. And good to hear your voice, MJ. Thank you for having us and thanks for being here. So today we're going to talk about, obviously, other than taking TeloYouth, what are some of the big needle movers that you can do to improve your health? So these are the top three. When we look at everything, there's so many different things we can do for our health. But when we look at these, stress reduction, sleep, and time-restricted eating, these are the top three. We're going to cover these in detail, but when we talk about stress, when we're looking at our current landscape with what's going on with viruses, the flu and the corona, what's going on with our economic landscape, what's happening, just health is at an all-time, heightened sense for everybody. The other thing too is with the stressors, we really do have this loss of connection and engagement, with friends and family. I mean, think about it. When you go out in public and you even see somebody smiling at them, you have to kind of smile with your eyes. We don't know what people are doing or seeing. We can't even sense what's happening underneath that mask. So the stressors are just off the charts right now. When we look at sleep, this is just a big one. And this is about the good quality sleep. Dr. Chris is going to get into that one. And then also our body needs rest from food or from calories. And we will talk about why that is and how that can truly impact our life. So what is stress and how does it impact us? Now, there's a famous endocrinologist, Hans Selye, and in 1936, he put together this bell curve. And if you look at the level of stress on the bottom, you can see on the left-hand side, this is when it's calm and performance is low, and you see that bar on the left. When we move into eustress in the middle, this is where we have optimal performance. This is when we have a little bit of stress. It energizes us, it motivates us, it helps us to stay focused. And this is when whenever we're working or we're doing something, there's no effort, it just flows. Now, what happens when we move over into that distress? And that's what we're seeing a lot of today. This is when it's too much. This is when we go into that fatigue or exhaustion or the ill health, the breakdown and the burnout. That's when we see those major imbalances occur. And again, this takes time to move over into this distress. And, when we look at this, there's so many things around change. When we have the ability to change back and forth from calm to eustress and go back to calm, we have a resiliency. And what are the two things that people in general dislike the most? It's change. Number one. Number two, the way things are. And so with that, quandary, it kind of is putting people in this real distressed place because we're having to change right now so quickly on the dime. Dr. Chris, do you have anything?
Hey there.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had a little interference there. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, Hans Healy did this back in 1936, and, the science has evolved, and now we're beginning to understand how there's just a little bit of healthy stress that's somewhere in between the eustress and the distress curve there. And these are some of the things that we are educating and teaching about how to have optimal rejuvenation. And, this is where exercise comes in and things like that. So remember this word as well. There's hormesis or hormetic stress, and that's a healthy stress. That's a new part of this curve and part of the new science. So we'll continue to share that. And I just love this topic because we get so many questions about, well, what do I do for my health? And this is where people need to start. It's the foundation. And there's so much information that comes at us from so many different directions. And where do you begin? Do you start with this herb? Do you start with this, diet plan? Or so I'm just so excited about sharing this topic. And stress is number one, Dr. Tina. You got it right here.
Absolutely. And knowing these three different areas, are you in your calm state, your eustress state, or distress state? Now, with TeloYouth, if you're over on that distress or even in the eustress, TeloYouth can help you stay more energized, focused when you're in that optimal performance eustress phase. Or if you're in distress, it can move you back into eustress or over into the calm phase. And we're going to talk about those ingredients here later. So also Hans Selye, he identified what we call the general adaptation syndrome. So when we look at the left-hand side here, everybody has a resistance to stress or a resilience to stress in their own way. Some people can handle stress so much easier than other people, and it's all relative. So our stress response system, it will first defend us before it moves over into that fatigue state. So when we see this first phase, that's the alarm reaction. Okay, now our resources are going to become mobilized. We're going to kind of start paying attention. We're going to be, our hormones are going to change. There's going to be some physiological things that are going to happen. And then we have our resistance to stress, and that can only last so long before exhaustion will set in. And our level of stress resilience will determine how long our body can stay in that resistance stage before we move into that third phase. And that's that exhaustion phase. So again, the greater your stress resilience, the more intense or prolonged of the stressor you can handle before you move into that exhaustion. And that's where TeloYouth helps build your stress resilience. And it does it in a lot of different ways. And we'll get into those as well. So when we look at what happens when we end up in that greater stress phase for longer periods of time, we go into that exhaustion or our resiliency becomes low. How do you know if you're in that greater stress phase? You can sense the burnout, your cortisols are increased, and you don't get to sleep very well at night. And when we end up with that poor sleep, guess what happens? Our resiliency drops even more. We're unable to handle the stressors as well as we used to. And we get locked into this cycle. So when this happens and our cortisols increase, we end up with these lower melatonin phases, and we don't produce melatonin normally like we need to help us with our sleep. So we end up in this poor sleep, poor rejuvenation phase. And I don't know about you, but Dr. Chris, I'm a perfect example of what happened last night working on the presentation at 10 o'clock last night. And I went till about 11. And guess what? I couldn't sleep because my mind was going. So many things were happening. I was thinking about all of these different things for today, and my cortisols were up. So this was me on the pillow. I look different than that guy, but absolutely couldn't sleep.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Dr. Tina. The body needs sleep to repair, recharge, and rejuvenate. But if we don't switch from the releasing energy mode during the day and move back into the making and storing energy at nighttime, you were essentially just telling your body 10 o'clock last night that, oh no, I still need more energy. I need to release energy. It's still daytime. I'm looking at the computer, I'm looking at my phone, or all the different stimulations of the light that were coming at you was telling your body that it's daytime. And so this is why we need that approach to wind down and go into that quality sleep. So the important thing to take away here from this chart to show how we go in and out of cycles of sleep, it shows that the quality of sleep is what determines our ability to restore and regenerate and repair. So getting good deep REM sleep, you hear about the rapid eye movement sleep. Well, this is the dream sleep. This is where we unwind our psyche, our traumas that we hold on to, the things that are more buried deeper into the unconscious and subconscious mind. And then the other phase is the deep healing sleep, where we go into the deep delta and theta brainwave sleep. These are the brain waves where we totally disconnect from our outer environment, and the body shifts at this time into a whole new state of repair because it isn't distracted by anything else in order to regenerate and rejuvenate. So, like the person is just lifeless, they're dead, they're gone. But that's that deep, deep, delta and theta sleep. Dr. Tina, anything to add there?
No, it's great. One thing that we have noticed, people when they start taking their TeloYouth and they move into that REM sleep, so many of those deep traumas that we have held within our body do start to get released during that deep sleep phase. And we find that people have very strange dreams, or memories will come and they'll wake up and say, wow, that was very bizarre. I don't know why I had that dream. But just to be aware that that is a great time for the body to work through releasing some of those stored traumas.
Exactly. It's a great healing mechanism. So here's some tips for a great night's sleep. And you want to have your room nice and dark and cool. This helps us to go deep with no outside stimulation. And then we train the body with a regular routine. The body loves routine and regulation to do everything better. When there's no surprises, we can focus on the regeneration. And this is what happens when we get into that routine. Exercise regularly, not at night, not late in the day, because that stimulates the body, but earlier in the day. This is a healthy stress that helps us to, move the circulation, detoxify, help build the body with all the things that we've stimulated and facilitated with the body. And then avoid bright light after sunset. And this is what Dr. Tina was talking about. You've got these new high definition televisions that just emit this powerful light, our computer screens, the Wi-Fi routers that connect our phones and computers. All of this is referred to as non-native electromagnetic fields. And non-native means it's something that our body hasn't evolved with. It doesn't understand it, doesn't know how to work with it. So this really throws off our circadian rhythms. It throws off the clock as far as telling our body when it's supposed to go down and rest and repair versus when it's supposed to make energy and be vital. Avoid caffeine within 8 hours of sleeping. And the reason for this is because that caffeine stays in the body for a long time. And people will say, well, I can drink caffeine and go to sleep. Well, you do go to sleep, but guess what? You don't go into that deep healing sleep. So even though you may be able to sleep consuming caffeinated drinks, tea or coffee or something with guarana. Don't fool yourself, because you're looking for that deep healing and repairing sleep. And caffeine interferes with that if it's taken too late in the day. And then stop eating within 3 hours of sleeping. The reason for this is that the digestive process is one of the most high energy functions of the body. And so if your body's sending all this energy out to digest and break down your foods, it disrupts that ability to wind down and go into those deeper states, because it's too busy working on the dinner that you had too late. And then get that daily sun exposure. And the sun is how we evolved long before we had artificial light and all the different ways that we would shield ourselves and change our environment. We evolved with this circadian rhythm where the morning sun told our bodies when to produce, to make melatonin and to make the dopamines and all the different chemicals we need for activating the energy processes during the day and the sleep process at night. So the sun really helps us with our biochemistry. In the afternoon, the sun helps us make the vitamin D and tells our body what cycle that we're in and what to do with itself. So this is all part of staying connected to nature, and all the wonderful things we can do to enhance our and support what we're trying to do with a healthy life. Dr. Tina, anything to add?
Yeah, that daily sun exposure can be tricky, for some people, especially up here in the north, or, in some of the areas where there's a lot of rain. So you just have to be really, really in tune with getting out there when that sun, is out, to be able to get out there and really, really get that into the skin. Whether it's your face during these winter months, or more sun exposure to the skin in the afternoon to help
Right.
that vitamin D3.
And so few of us realize that the body actually has receptor sites, not just in the eyes, but on the skin that capture the sunlight and tell the body what time it is and what it should be doing during that time of the day. So here you see a common slide that we share in our presentations, because of the fertilized tissue extract is such a unique ingredient. It has been clinically shown to mediate stress. And when you mediate stress, you reduce your cortisol output. Cortisols are really important. It's a vital hormone that helps us gives us energy, but also it's expressed when we need to defend ourselves from stressors. So here you see a chart that the average release of cortisols during the day for men and women. And then you see with athletes, where you induce stress, how much more cortisol we produce. And the more you produce, and when you're taking the TeloYouth, you're able to have a greater reduction. So you handle stress so much more efficiently. But what's relative to what we're sharing here today about the sleep and the benefits of the stress mediation is that when you balance those cortisols, this is the trigger that allows melatonin to be released, because they're antagonistic biochemicals, neurotransmitters, and hormones. And what that means is that melatonin will not release as if there's cortisol that's high in the body. And so one is dependent upon the other, and cortisol is dominant. So whenever your body needs to make cortisol to handle stress, it'll always override the production of melatonin. So the fact that you can take TeloYouth and reduce your stress so that you reduce those cortisols naturally, now you allow for the melatonin to be released. And how important is that? It's critical. Your melatonin is what allows you to get that deep sleep. So if you want rejuvenation and repair and regeneration, you need your melatonin. What does melatonin do on top of that? It enhances your immune system. it's one of the key components that doctors are using today in natural medicine to boost your immunity, to handle foreign invaders. So many doctors know to give melatonin when an individual comes in with any type of viral infection, bacterial infection. So it's not just for sleep. And so it's a key component for optimal rejuvenation. Dr. Tina.
Yeah. Yes, and one of our other ingredients, the rhodiola, is also a very calming herb in our formula. So the two of them are so synergistic together, the FTE and the rhodiola. Oh, how many of us need to laugh more? I know I do, because life can be taken so seriously, especially with, isolation and the loneliness. And some people are truly having this despair, having that feeling of disconnectedness. So we have to laugh. We have to find things that will make us laugh. What does it do? It stimulates our endorphins, and those are the happy hormones. Endorphins, they reduce pain, and boost our pleasure. Our endorphins are stimulated not only with laughter, but with exercise, good food, and with sexual activity. So we need to laugh. We need to stimulate our endorphins. It also reduces our stress hormones. And Dr. Chris was talking about cortisol. When our cortisols are high, our blood glucose goes high. Um, the other stress hormone is adrenaline. And when our adrenaline is high, it elevates our blood pressure. So laughing can help reduce our stress hormones. It also enhances our creativity. And just to be able to think of things that you can do, or with your family, with your friends, even though we're a bit disconnected, we can all somehow have more creativity. And when we're in that stressed mode, by the way, it's like most people get this block in their creativity. It kind of stops them. So laughter can help release that blockage and help with creativity. It also boosts our rejuvenation hormones, and those are the D3s, the testosterones, the DHEA, the good estrogens, which help us to rejuvenate and stay young. And it also makes life more enjoyable because, let's face it, everything is so serious right now. And if we can all just step back, go into neutral, know that there's so many things we can't even control. We can control how we feel most of the time. So laughter is an amazing shifter. And when you laugh, it's contagious. So figure out different ways that you can incorporate laughter, and it doesn't cost anything. So hopefully you've gotten some good tips from this.
Absolutely. When that stress goes down, it's easier to laugh. And that's what TeloYouth does. It's not just the rejuvenation, it's the ability to enjoy life again. So here's the third phase of the top three, the needle movers that we're talking about. And this is talking about the restricted eating, meaning that we should eat within a specific window of time. And the reason for that is that it supports our body's ability to have autophagy. And that's just a fancy word for how the body can clean house or recycle the trash, as it says on the slide here. And why is that important? It's important because it allows us to operate without all the garbage and resistance that happens when our body doesn't have healthy autophagy. And so let's talk a little bit about what's being expressed here on this slide, is because if you see the type 2 diabetes, the fatty liver, the cell death, and all the different conditions that are created when we don't have good, healthy autophagy. Well, there was a study done in UCLA just a while back, a few years ago, and it showed that 90% of the people eat more than a 12-hour window during the day. and 50% of those eat like 16 hours a day. So they wake up and they're snacking, and they go to sleep and they're snacking. And the only time they're not eating is when they're sleeping. And what this does to the body is that it creates a metabolic imbalance or metabolic inflexibility. So we shared this in a previous presentation where we said 90% of the population of the US, the Western culture here predominantly, has lost its metabolic flexibility. And what that means is that we start developing insulin resistance. And insulin is how the body breaks down the carbohydrates and makes energy, and essentially signals the cells how it's going to handle the foods that we eat, specifically the fats and sugars, to make energy. And so it's our ability to burn seamlessly the differences between the fat and the sugar, because fat has a higher caloric content and far more energy stored in fat than what we would consume with sugar or release with sugar. So the ability to switch back and forth and the ability to take advantage of the higher energy components within the fat itself is what we talk about with metabolic flexibility. So the inability to create energy efficiently begins to cascade and break down into inflammation, and this creates all the other chronic conditions that manifest in the body. So this is why you see things like cardiomyopathy, which means the breakdown of the heart muscle, and more infectious diseases, meaning we're more susceptible. Why? Because we lose that innate immune response, the ability to respond immediately to a foreign invader before our body can recognize it and make the antibodies during the acquired immune response. And cell death, what that means is that if we can efficiently repair a cell with autophagy, then the cell doesn't have to die. And the less cells that die off, that means the more cells that we have to maintain a longer life and facilitate longevity. Dr. Tina, anything you want to add here?
We have such an abundance of food. We have this convenience, and we have it, so at our fingertips. We have it wherever we go, we can eat. And it's just a practice of really, being steadfast and saying, wait a minute, I'm not in this feeding window. I'm going to not eat. I'm going to make sure that I just stop. And it's a habit that you have to create, and be able to have that discipline. And oh my goodness, you will see such amazing results with your body, cleaning out all the old debris.
So true. It's like we're programmed to think that we need 3 meals a day, and few of us realize that back in the day of the invention of cereals, Kellogg created the third meal of the day, the breakfast time.
Mhm.
So it's all part of the illusion that we bought into. So understand how the body really works and what it really needs. And here is another expression of how autophagy helps us. When we have a young and healthy cell, it has the ability to, you know, make all the different components, the enzymes that it needs to make energy and to process and digest. And what's the main responsibility of a cell? To make proteins, and those proteins are what signal everything that's happening in the body. And why TeloYouth is so critical to supporting and giving the body those signal molecules that it needs to help the body discover how to get young again. And have functional mitochondria. The mitochondria are little energy devices uh, in our cells, and there's thousands of them in the cells that need the highest energy production, like the brain, the heart, and the immune cells. So when these start to break down, we create a senescent cell, and that means just a cell that's gone dormant. it loses its ability to not just repair itself or regenerate. It doesn't even know how to die off. So it just clutters the body and creates excess baggage. So it drags all the other cells down. So if you have a senescent cell next to a healthy cell, it's like it drags it down because it gets in the way of communication and functioning, because the cells of the body work collectively. So your heart cells, the many cells that make up your heart work together and in coordination. And when you have all these senescent cells in between the healthy cells, you just break down that orchestration and that communication. And it interferes with the energy pathways. It interferes with the actual structural change of the cell itself. It changes shape because it has this extra debris and lack of activity and flexibility and mobility. And think about it, we're energy first. And when you change the shape of something, you change the harmonics. So you see how the sound frequencies work with the light frequencies of energy that we talk about, that we're energy first before we're physical. And so when you have senescent cells, you're changing the harmonics of health and well-being to that of just sluggishness and slowness and all the different conditions that evolves into. Dr. Tina, next slide.
Oh, I'd like to just mention and maybe help people to understand this at another level. And when we're around people that are energy drains, like you're talking about the cell on the right, it's the same thing. When they're negative and they're pulling on your energy and they're not balanced, we can feel that. We can sense that. And when you look at the cell on the left, the healthy cell, the young cell, here it says adaptable to stress. On the other side, the senescent cell, unable to adapt to stress. So the resiliency, again, in your body lowers. And I just wanted to bring that forward with, even when we're around people that are, at a more pulling on our energy, more on a negativity, you can feel that, you can sense that.
So true. Life, our inner body parallels our outer body. It's like the microcosm reflects the
Macro.
macrocosm and vice versa. Yeah.
Definitely.
So to kind of wrap this all together here on one slide, is that time restricted eating increases autophagy. And what that does, it helps to get rid of those senescent cells, those dormant cells. It helps improve our mitochondrial health, which improves our energy production, our ability to do everything that we want to do in the body and in our lives. And it eliminates the virally infected cells. And so know that there's just not the COVID-19 or the flu virus. We're surrounded with viruses. This is part of what nature is about. And we prevent the infections that can be created when we have an overabundance of these viral infected cells. It reduces cellular apoptosis. So what that means is, again, cell death. So the ability to prevent the cells from dying off when they're damaged, we can repair the damage. But if it is too far gone, well, it'll remove it, but it's in a balanced way, it's in a healthy way. And we create a stronger and a more stress resilient body and mind. And it's that resiliency that gives us our youth. So Dr. Tina, you started out with that stress and how we handle stress and creates that resilience. Well, resilience equals longevity. And this is what TeloYouth is helping everyone do with all the different ingredients. They support this dynamic of the big three that we're talking about here as far as how to help the body.
And so we want to talk a little bit about the rejuvenation program, because when we're talking about time restricted eating, one of the ways that we help our members move into that time restricted eating is when you're doing the rejuvenation program, and if you look over on the right, suitable for under age 55 or over age 55, you look at your daily intake, whether it's 6 capsules or 8 capsules in the morning or dinner or before bed. You can do your time restricted eating by taking your TeloYouth during one of your meals. So to give you an example, I am not a breakfast person. I never have been, and I'm glad. And so I don't like to eat past 6 o'clock in the evening. So that gives me until about noon or 1 o'clock, and I will have my first set of TeloYouth in the morning, just before I eat, or I should say, right around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And so I break my fasting or my resting, my food resting cycle with my TeloYouth. And then I eat within a 6 or an 8 hour window, depending on the day. And then there's no nutrition or calories after that time. And that allows the body to clean itself. So this is one way that you can incorporate time restricted eating. And some people don't like to eat in the evening. They would rather have their breakfast. It really depends on the person. It depends on your schedule. It depends on your lifestyle and what you can manage for yourself. Dr. Chris, do you have anything to add with incorporating TeloYouth into the time restricted program?
Well, I like how you talk about how it's an individual area of understanding, because I know for myself, I like to start earlier in the day. So I take my TeloYouth first thing around 9 o'clock, and then that's when I break my fasting process, the nightly fasting, and then finish my day around 3 or 4 o'clock, and then start my restricting cycle. So it's a personal preference, but know that the TeloYouth helps you do that because it facilitates balancing your blood sugars, that insulin receptivity that's so important, and reducing that stress that oftentimes we eat to sedate ourselves. We use it as a drug. And you can just think of, well, if I'm emotionally upset or I need something to calm me down, what's the best stress remediator that you can think of? TeloYouth. So you take your TeloYouth and all of a sudden you're supporting yourself with that emotional dynamic of imbalance, as well as handling the physiology that needs the specific concentrated nutrients to balance the blood sugars so that you can go into this time restricted phase.
Okay, we talked about the top 3: reducing our stress, good quality sleep, time restricted eating. And we also came up with some other whole body rejuvenation recommendations. Dr. Chris, do you want to start?
Sure. And again, we've mentioned some of these, but this is all part of the lifestyle consciousness, lifestyle awareness. And so limit your EMF exposure. And that means the non-native electromagnetic fields that you're exposed to, because your body really it deals with them as a stressor rather than something that supports you. Good sunlight exposure helps you stay healthy and strong, the fresh air and sunshine, but that non-native electromagnetic fields, those exposures are foreign to the body. And especially if you get them late at night after sunset, your body really is disrupted by these non-native EMFs. And you could tune into some of our other presentations that show the physiology that changes because of them.
Great. And then when we're looking at nutrient dense meals, we're talking about getting in those good organic fruits and vegetables, foods of the rainbow, getting as many colors in as you can a day, getting in those good proteins without, hormones injected into them, exercising, preferably outdoors if you can, because you get that fresh air. I know that some of us across the country are really dealing with some of the issues with clean air right now. So you have to be conscious and aware of that. Emotional health is so important. Find those small ways to have fun, reducing your stress and laughing. One other thing here is a gratitude practice. Most everyone on this call has probably heard of this before, and this is where just every day, either before you go to bed, which is wonderful to do before you go to bed because your whole being is just in that grateful place. Think of the one thing that you're grateful for, or write down three things that you're grateful for. Tell people that you appreciate them. Thank them for their input, thank them for who they are and what they contribute to your life. And it allows them and us to feel that emotional connection again. Make sure you're drinking that good, clean, pure water, spring water. If you're doing purified water, go ahead and add, minerals in. And then, of course, take your TeloYouth. And Dr. Chris, would you like to add anything?
Probably one of the things we can add on this slide would be, of course, the good GI tract, the good microbiome, healthy gut. And boy, this is the best recommendations for everyone to understand the top three needle movers and everything else that goes on. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today. And we want to just again emphasize that our presentations are for educational purposes only. And if you have any health issues, you want to be sure and contact a good health professional to guide you in your need. And what we're doing here is not designed to diagnose, cure, or treat any type of condition, but to help you understand how your body works and how to work actually with your health professional so that you can understand what they're telling you as well as understand how the body works for you to maintain your long life and health.